Hi everybody, this is Virginia Hay, and I have the pleasure of coming along really 007 today, and so listen on and enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Really 007 podcast for this very, very special interview we have today with Virginia Hay. Now, Virginia, of course, you will recognise her from The Living Daylights, where she played Rubavitch. Pushkin's, I was going to say, is it his wife, I think, or his mistress? I don't know what to say, Virginia. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Hello everyone, by the way. I don't know whether it was never really decided whether she was a wife or mistress, or I think I just thought she was a girlfriend, his girlfriend.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that's obviously where us Bond fans know her from, but she's been in many other things on film, TV, and she's also, well, she's done so many things. She started modelling, and then there's a bit of artwork, isn't there? And then there's loads of therapy you've done, and all sorts, and you've lived in England and Australia, and America, of course.
And America, yeah. And lots of things. So the career really started in Australia. I was born in Sydney and came over to England at 9 with the whole family, through three brothers and a sister and myself, like you, three brothers. And I was the baby, so Mum wanted to wait until I was old enough to really appreciate, the trip, and also old enough to handle it, I suppose. So I was about 9 when we all set off, and there were no planes in those days that went from Sydney to England. It was England that Mum wanted to come to. She had the idea that we should enjoy Europe and culture and architecture and music and all the beautiful things that exist in Europe that don't exist in Australia. Australia is such a new country. There is, of course, there's culture and beautiful music and great architecture in Australia as well, but nothing like the history of Europe. So she wanted to really, she's a clever lady, she wanted to educate all of us in the sort of niceties of Europe and the beauty of Europe. And I think I was the only one that really appreciated it, because everyone else was chasing either boys or girls. They were of that age, they were teenagers and much older. So I was the one that was absorbing everything like a sponge. So we stayed here until I was about 14, and then went back to Australia. And then I came back here when I was about 19, must have been 19 or 20, after doing a year of fine arts college, studying fine arts. And then, I'm just trying to think of, no, I'm skipping over the modelling, this very, very first start of the modelling. So when I was in Sydney going to art school, I got approached by a fashion editor at a magazine when I was at the bus stop waiting to go home. My mother was going to art school at the same time as me because she started art school a number of years before she started to have children. She's an incredibly creative lady. And then as soon as she had children, she put the art school on hold. And then when I was old enough, the last baby, she went back to art school. And I happened to be in art school at the same time. So it really was not cool for mother and daughter to be at the same art school. Not in those days, maybe these days, but I don't know, not even these days. You really don't want your mother to be watching.
Were you in the same classes together?
No, I made sure that we were as far away as possible. And I wanted to go to the big art school in East Sydney, but that's where she went. So I went to as far away as I could. I went to Cogra, as far away as possible while still living at home, as far as the commute is concerned. So I went to Kogarah and she went to East Sydney, and occasionally I would go from Kogarah to visit her in East Sydney. And one time when I went up to visit her, I was she couldn't leave when I wanted to leave. She had the car. And I was standing at a bus stop and a fashion editor lady stopped me in the street. I mean, it's just classical, you know, it's a classic sort of being discovered. And I had no intention of being a model. I wanted to be an artist, and I wanted to get into the film industry behind the scenes, not in front. But I just happened to be, I couldn't help it. You know, I happened to be very tall with high cheekbones and pretty. You know, this was a very, very long time ago. And so I had the look of the day, I guess. But I wasn't really interested in having the look of the day. But so this lady, just to cut a huge long story shorter, she asked me if I wanted to be a model, and she introduced herself as a fashion editor of a magazine called Pole in Sydney, which is very trendy at the time, very hip. And she said that she liked my look, and did I want to be a model? And I said no. And she said, you don't want to be a model? I said no. And I told her what I wanted to be. And she said, she tried the money aspect of things. She said, well, are you receiving any pocket money from your parents? Or do you have to do a little bit of work on the side? And I said, no, Mum won't give me any pocket money because she wants me to, you know, earn my own living. So I was working in a fashion store, you know, like a boutique dress shop at the time. And she said, this is in the, when was this? In the late 60s, I think. So she said, well, how much are you earning? And I was sort of looking at her thinking, wow, you're asking so many of these questions. I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll tell her. So I told her that it was something stupid, you know, like £20 a day or $20 a day. And she said, how would you like to earn $140 an hour? And the first thing that I was thinking of was, wow, how many books on photography could I buy with that? You know, the sorts of books, that glossy, big, beautiful books that Mum probably wouldn't want to buy for me because they weren't part of the curriculum. So I thought, oh God, this is great. So I was thinking of it from that aspect, and not, you know, not the sort of the glamour side of things, because I was never really interested in that. So then I started modeling, and that's when I earned enough money to take myself back to London, back here, and then spent a number of years here. And then in jumping forward, I went backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, trying to remember. It was such a long time ago. So in the 70s, so I'd stayed here for a few years and then arrived here in 70, I think it was. And then 76, I went back to Sydney. And then I got spotted again at a party. And this time, because I was ahead over everybody else, and because I'm quite tall. And the top agency in Sydney approached me at the party and asked me if I wanted to do some modeling. And I said no. But they convinced me, and I just thought, oh, well, I'm only here for a little while. I might as well, a few months, I might as well just do something and, you know, earn some money on the side. So then I started doing television commercials, and I quite liked doing them because it was photography that I was interested in, and film behind the scenes. And doing commercials is different, obviously, from doing a photo shoot. Doing commercials, you're working with film cameras, as it was in those days, you know, a proper set, sound people, you know, the full crew. And I loved it. I loved it from that aspect of it. So I did about 57 television commercials. And in those days in Sydney, the casting people used to cast commercials, you know, modeling jobs, commercials, and films, and TV as well. So they did everything. So of course they were casting me for loads and loads and loads of television commercials. And one casting agent in particular kept on asking me if I was interested in doing any film work or TV work, and I said no. I haven't been trained. I don't know. I think I'm a bit scared of it. I don't really know. I wouldn't know what to do. And she said, "But you've been doing so many commercials. It's just an extension of that." Anyway, I said no. I didn't really want to, because it was a full-on career, and I still wanted to go back to behind the scenes in film. So she came up with Mad Max, and she contacted me and said, we've got this film we're casting for, and there's a fantastic character called Warrior Woman, and we just think that you would be brilliant for it. Because I didn't ever wear any makeup and was just a bit of a tomboy, really. And so this character is very much like that. So I ended up going for it and got it. So that was the beginning.
I'll say, Virginia, straight off, The Road Warrior is one of my favourite films. It's an absolutely brilliant film, and your role is legendary in it. I've got to say, I've got to be careful how I say this, but being a teenage boy watching this role, it was a revelation. That's all I can say.
I know. Do you know so many guys say similar things to me, because she was the first female. I mean, apart from Sigourney Weaver in Alien, I think. Yeah. Isn't that right? What year was Alien with Sigourney Weaver?
1979, I think.
Oh, okay. She just beat us, yeah, because we were filming in 80, and I think it got released in 81. So she was the first female warrior who, as far as I know anyway, there might have been some French or European characters that had portrayed warrior type characters, but as far as I knew in the commercial world, there weren't very many. I think back in those days, if you were an actress, you were glamorous, and either you were a glamorous character, or you were a very realistic character, like little old lady in the sweet shop, or a nice normal person. But if you were slightly glamorous in any way, you played, someone pretty or elegant. And so this was kind of groundbreaking, to play a warrior. And so I was very attracted to the role. And lots of guys mentioned that because she was such an unusual character, because she was the first of her kind, really, and no makeup, just no makeup, just dirt. And they painted on eyebrows that went in funny direction, and a bit of dirt in my hair, and they crimped it, which was very indicative of the time, the 80s. But they wanted to make it. I've got very fine, straight hair, which I've lost. Unfortunately, I have cancer at the moment, so I've lost all my long locks, which is why I'm wearing a hat, so do forgive me. But back in the day, I had very long hair, and my hair is quite fine, so they wanted it to look a little bit more wild, like a lion. So a lot of men tell me that they're at an age where I was their fantasy, I guess.
I didn't say that.
It's like, they still say that now, guys still say that now. It's really amazing. It was the timing, it was the time, it was the 80s, it's different. It's a different world now. I mean, but she was a great character.
I mean, yeah, because it was that era where obviously you've got the likes of yourself, and then you've got Linda Hamilton coming later. It's that very much that the physical powerful woman kind of thing. It's very I'm just trying to watch. It's pioneering. It's pioneering.
Because that's still going today. That's a huge impact from back then that you still see in cinema, in the films that are coming out of the cinema now. You see that character,
including the new Mad Max films.
Yeah,
the latest ones about the women now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I used to be very athletic, and I loved going to the gym, and I loved being strong. And I made sure, even though you didn't really see it because of the costume, and I had very slight muscles compared to, now when people really beef up and they've got six packs and things like that. but I still was fairly lithe and muscular for a woman at the time. So, and that was unusual. So, and yeah, that's carried on from then. I think Sigourney Weaver sort of started it, and then I picked up the baton, and then it went to Linda Hamilton, who really then went full hog on it. Oh God, I forgot I've got makeup on. And I just rubbed my eye. Oh, I haven't worn makeup in such a long time. It was kind of nice to be,
So what was your experience like then on your first movie set then, on the set of a movie as big as that?
Well, I'd done a lot of television commercials, so I was used to a lot of cameras and sets. But this was very different because it was shot in the desert, and there were cranes, and it wasn't like shooting in a studio at all. When you're shooting in a studio, you see all of the equipment around you and lights, and everything's artificial. But when you're shooting in the desert, and you're not shooting any interiors at all, except inside the tents. You just see it's all larger than life. There's cameras on helicopters instead of cameras on arms inside a studio. The cameras on the helicopter, the cameras on trucks, the cameras on strapped onto some mad vehicle hybrid. And George Miller, so clever and so I was going to say futuristic. He and Norma Morrisseau was one of the production designers, and she also designed the clothes. And I think she was Australian. I can't remember, although I thought that she might have been English. But she had just come from England, as I had. I think I got back in 80, and she got back maybe a year before. And in London, just in the late 70s, was punk. So there was punk, there was straps and leather pieces and mad hair and piercings and all the things that the kids these days think is new, but it's not. We did it years before they did. And so she was so clever. She took the look of punk and introduced it into the world of warriors. And George ran with that, and he worked with a whole load of engineers, and they were ripping motorbikes and cars apart and rebuilding them, and they created this look which has been copied by so many films. And even the look of Mad Max, to this day people are wearing mohawks, which comes from punk, but it's really, I think the look that's still here in this day and age came from Mad Max 2, Road Warrior, more so than the punk world, because the punk world was rather unattractive, on purpose. It was anti-glamour, anti-fashion. And in Mad Max, they made it really sexy. All of the punk looks were really sexy, and the costumes, and so she made these hybrids of punk and bondage and all kinds of things all mixed together, and that survives to this day. There are elements of Mad Max Road Warrior in every single day I walk down the street. I see it every day, in hairdos in particular. But working on the back to the question, working on the sets were, I mean, you really felt like you were there. It was real. In fact, oh God, I have to tell you that I forgot about this until just now. When I first went up to the set to Broken Hill, we caught a plane, a small plane, caught a big plane, and then a little tiny plane to get us from wherever the local airport was to Broken Hill. And then we transferred there's a few cast members, and then we transferred to a 4-wheel drive to go across the desert. And the sand is very loose, it's very fine and powdery and red. And so as you're driving along it just, billows on either side of the vehicle. And so up ahead, we started to slow down, and there's nothing. You just look out the window and there's nothing. I had never been in the desert in Australia before. It was really quite beautiful. There's nothing there. So there's nothing for miles around, and then up in front of us was a big cloud of dust. And I thought, oh gosh, it must be like a dust storm, desert dust storm. And so the driver said, we're just going to stop here and wait for a bit. And he didn't tell us why. We just assumed it was a dust storm. We needed to, because we couldn't see through it. And that we needed to wait for a little while until it settled before we could continue. Next thing I know, there's a bare bottom backing out of this this dust storm in S&M gear, and it was Wes, the one of the lead baddie, and he was backing out of the dust storm. I thought, oh my God, you know, the locals in Broken Hill are pretty out there. So a bare bottom in all, and leather chaps and you know, mad mohawk and painted face. Of course, none of us had seen the actual characters of those completed characters. So we're all in awe, and we're laughing and saying, what the hell's going on? And the driver was just matter of fact. He said, oh, they're shooting. This is one of the sets, and they're just finishing a shoot. As soon as they finish and clear the gate, you know, old-fashioned term for filmmaking. These days it's all digital. We can proceed. And we were thinking, oh, this is awesome. You know,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So that was our introduction to it, the bare bottom coming out of the...
I still see it now.
Yeah, I wish we could crawl inside my mind and just see that. It was just phenomenal. Yeah.
There's a link to Bond because your director, John Glenn, in Living Daylights, we've spoken to him, and he said he thought Mel Gibson would be a really good Bond. But I think he was probably too expensive at the time. But that would have been for Living Daylights, actually. That would have been the same time.
Yeah, well, it probably would have been. Do you know what? I didn't know that. He didn't say anything. Of course, he wouldn't to me because I didn't have anything to do with Bond at the time. Yeah, he would have been. Oh, that's really interesting to think of Mel. He certainly had the charisma, and I have to tell you that when I hadn't met him. Oh, by the way, I love to chat, and so you have to tell me if I'm talking too much.
No.
No. Fascinating.
I love a bit of a chat. I really do. I always have. People are always telling me to, you know, shut up.
Let's listen.
So I was curious, you know, who's Mel Gibson, and he wasn't a big star then. He is American, but he had lived in. He was brought to Australia as a teenager. I think a young teenager. I can't remember how old, 12 or something. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he had done Tim and something else, I think, before, but I hadn't seen him. I was living in England. And so I'd seen photos, you know, because I was curious, and I asked the production office, oh, show me who's playing who. You know, we all wanted to know. And they slapped down this, you know, glamorous photo of Mel. And I thought, oh, wow, he's good looking. And they all said, oh, wait till you meet him. He's just gorgeous. And his photo wasn't of a typically gorgeous man. But there was, you know, you could tell there was something there. He looked quite, he had a boyish look in the photo, had a boyish look. But they're all raving and raving and raving and raving. I thought, oh, what's the big deal here? So we were, about a week later, we were in rehearsals in Sydney. This is before we went to Broken Hill. And we're in a hall. And George loves a hall, doesn't he? Do you remember Witches of Eastwick? That when the back of the church went, poof, poof, you know, in walks.
Yeah. I've forgotten he directed that film as well. But, I mean, he's done so many brilliant films, hasn't he? So many.
Oh, yeah, just brilliant. And Lorenzo's Oil, but in Witches of Eastwick, Jack Nicholson. You know, the church is very, you know, it's sort of shadowy inside, and suddenly the back door, the church doors at the back open, boom, boom, and let light in, and in comes the devil, Jack Nicholson, shining light in the place. So a similar kind of thing happened in Australia when we all met Mel. So we're in a hall, and the hall had back swing doors. So the doors go, flying open, boom, boom, in pours the light. We're all going, oh, who's that? So we turn around, and here is this gorgeous, gorgeous man. And he has charisma that just pours out of every atom of him. And he's got the it factor. If you meet him, he almost has an energy about him. He's definitely one of those actors. There's a lot of actors like that who have a real aura about them. And so that was my introduction. And he's the kind of guy that on paper, it doesn't really matter what someone looks like, but at the time we were all gasping and saying, oh God, isn't he gorgeous? But so the difference between his photo and him in real life was extraordinary because of this energy, and he carried that onto the screen. Yeah. So I can imagine him as Bond because of that energy, and in a suit. I don't know. I wonder whether it would have been interesting, wouldn't it, to see if him suited up, see if he could play that debonair, contained kind of guy, because all of Mel's characters have been characters where he's able to exude, this wonderful unbridled energy. And as Bond, he would have had to, contain it somewhat. But yeah.
How did he compare with Timothy in those stakes?
Oh, you can't compare them.
No.
Because they're completely, totally different people, and different personalities, different characters. And Timothy is different from all of the other Bonds as well. I haven't met them, but I'm just basing it on, what I've seen on film. But Timothy, just so very demure and polite and elegant and almost shy, and that a little bit of that comes across on screen as well. His character, he's such a lovely man, and of course we Bond girls, the lovelier he was, and the quieter and more demure he was, the louder we were, and the more outrageous we were with him. So we used to love to tease him and absolutely torture the poor man. We were terrible with him, and we flirted outrageously. It was all just fun, nothing ever happened, but we were flirting with him shamelessly just to make him blush, which he did. So, lots of fun, but he was very nice. I was very disappointed that he didn't stay on.
Oh,
He's our personal favourite James Bond. We adore him. We think he's just incredible. And so just to hear you talk about him in such lovely terms is very heartwarming to us.
Yeah, well, he is just he's such a gentleman, and he's so refined and so demure. I haven't. Do you know what? I haven't read any of Ian Fleming's books. I'm embarrassed to say I don't really know what the original Bond was supposed to be like. What was he supposed to be like? Tell me.
It's a great question. It's a great question. So I'll be honest with you. I'd read a few when I was younger, but then I hadn't read them properly, and I'd only started reading them properly over the last year myself. And I think there's a lot of things online that say, oh, such a person's Fleming's Bond. And I think when they say that, they mainly come down this thing of they perceive him as someone who's straight-laced, quite serious. And when I read the books, I saw that element, but I thought it was a lot more nuanced than that. I think there are elements of fun in there, and I think every single character, every single actor who's played James Bond has brought an element of that Fleming's Bond. But if you wanted to go with a traditional Fleming's Bond, what people traditionally think, I would agree that I think Timothy is probably the most like that. What would you guys say?
Oh, right.
I would say from having read it, yeah, Timothy is the one who, when you're reading it, he's the person who sort of comes back to, who you picture from what you're reading. And I do think there is now a difference between the sort of literary Bond and the cinematic Bond. And even though I think Timothy was brilliant in the films and and everything, perhaps he's not quite the big film star who wants to carry a franchise and everything, and maybe that's something that some of the others have done a bit better than he has. But in terms of the literary character and bringing that to life and putting it on screen, I think he was the best.
So I'm sorry for interrupting you. I had a thought. I didn't want to go. It's also, people have their favorite Bonds depending on what era they
very much so. Yeah.
For me, I grew up watching The Saint, so I really loved Roger Moore, and I loved his flirtatiousness. I loved he was so naughty, and I loved his the femininity almost in him, and in the every single Bond is completely different, but only Roger Moore had that, and only Roger Moore and Timothy had that sort of a very English, slightly feminine. I can't think of another word besides feminine, but there is something about that era where men were. I mean, you could go back hundreds and hundreds of years when men looked more like women than women did. Powdered and made up, and silks and satins and long hair and wigs and God knows what. It's very feminized. But when the true English gentleman was born, there was something, especially a royal, someone like a royal. There is a sort of a slight femininity there. I can't quite describe it. I don't know quite how to describe it, but that I quite like, and that Timothy had, and also Roger Moore. But that wasn't the be all and end all, of course. I just like the characters that they portrayed, and all of the Bonds were fairly flirtatious, except for Daniel Craig, who was very emotionless as far as I'm concerned, which disappointed me in a way. I mean, he's such a manly man, and the real assassin, like a lot of assassins in movies these days, very action man, assassin, emotionless. But I quite like the dandy. Oh, that was the word I was looking for, the dandy. I quite like the dandy Bond, who was all of those things, who was an assassin and very clever and highly skilled spy, but also had that lovely playfulness. That I enjoyed. So and Timothy had that in real life as well.
Wow,
such a lovely man. I mean, really very gentle. But
was he quite intense when it came to the acting? Was Timothy, did he switch on to acting? Was he two very different people, Timothy and James Bond, or did he just slip in?
No, I mean, actors, it's quite rare. It does happen that that an actor will play a character that's completely different from themselves, and that takes some skill. But for film, and there are a lot of actors that do that. But in this instance, I think I didn't have anything to do with casting, but I think people, I'm guessing now, people are generally cast because there's something about them that reminds the casting people and the producers of the character. So they know that as once they start acting, they'll tweak it. The actor will tweak it. So there wasn't a huge difference. However, of course, there's a seriousness. He's got, James Bond. You got the weight of your world on your shoulders. A lot of responsibility. You're not only holding the whole film up, but you're holding the brand up, and it's a massive brand. And it's a huge responsibility. So of course you're going to take it very, very seriously. And he did, he did a good job.
Like you say, it was on his shoulders. This was his first film. It's his chance to try and make an impact. Do you think you could kind of tell that, could you sense that about him? Could you sense that he felt the responsibility? And was there even that feeling on set as well for the film that it felt a bit different, a bit of a change of direction?
Well, I can't tell you if there was a feeling of a change of direction because I hadn't been on any other film sets, Bond film sets. But and he wasn't stressed at all. He was just really super professional, of course. And no, there wasn't a feeling of that was my interpretation. There wasn't a feeling of he didn't come across as someone who had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He came across as someone who was the ultimate professional, and he was lovely to work with and really pleasant on set, and didn't show any stress. But when it came down to work, he's a professional. No mucking around, not much anyway. And no, I didn't know that it was his first film, but he had come from theatre, and he'd done years of theatre. He's a theatre actor, and he's a brilliant actor. Really, really just very skilled professional. And so, we're all in awe of him because he came from the Royal Shakespeare Company, the RSC. And I'm sure that they were horrified, when he went off to, to star in James Bond, one of the most brands of the time. And maybe, I don't know, is a fantastic opportunity for him, because you're going straight to the view of the whole world. Especially, who was the Bond before him?
Roger Moore.
So Roger was immediately before.
It's quite different.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, very different. And so I'm sure you can imagine yourself. How.
Oh yeah.
The pressure, because what do? Do you emulate the person before you?
Yeah.
Or do you bring a new take to it?
Yeah.
And there would have been a lot of discussion with John Glenn about that. I don't know. You've interviewed John Glenn about this, and he probably told you that maybe he wanted Timothy just to be fresh and new. I don't know. Did he? And not like the one before?
I think Timothy himself wanted to bring his interpretation and studied very much on the Fleming books to bring that interpretation from there. I think John Glenn was definitely open to it, but I think that you probably see more of the adapting to Timothy's strengths in the second film. I think that's what John Glenn said, is that, like Living Daylights is a phenomenal film, but I think John Glenn did say the second film, License to Kill, he knew what Timothy's strengths were, so he adapted the film even more to that. But I think when I watch Timothy, I've heard people describe him as a generous actor, and one of the things that really strikes me is that when I watch him as Bond, everyone else shines around him when he's acting. He is an incredible actor, but it's not all the focus on him. He gives a platform for others to act, and I think there is no better example of that in the bedroom scene between yourself, him, and John Rhys Davies, where you have got what is, for me, the best scene in all James Bond, and I genuinely believe that. Like to me, the conflict in emotions that James Bond is going through, the use of Rubavitch as I suppose the pawn in the operation in some ways, and the distraction, but the sheer fear that you portray, and then you've got absolute brilliance from John Rhys Davies as well. You've just got the acting, which is sensational, and we'd just love you to tell us about that scene. And
I didn't see it that way at all. I'm surprised you do, but I'm glad you did. I didn't know much about acting at the time, so I just did my best and just portrayed it as close to the script as I could. And originally the script had me in a bathtub.
Ah, right.
And so I was expecting to turn up on set and be in a bathtub, and I stayed in the bathtub. But then they changed it.
So we only find out Bond is there when the security guard, is it, who comes in first?
Yeah. Well, originally I think I was meant to be in a bathtub, and then they changed it just the night before to me getting out of the bathtub naked, completely naked, and then you would see me from the back, completely naked. And at the time, I didn't feel comfortable with that, so then they changed it again to what you see, which is me having my robe pulled off. So it's just a little bit. It's a bit of a distraction. Timothy as Bond, Bond did it on purpose to distract the situation. Yeah. I pulled the robe off.
Is anything wrong?
Bond, don't make any sudden moves, General. Go to the table. Sit down.
I take it that this is not a social call, 007.
Correct. You should have brought lilies.
May I ask why?
Smiertspionem.
Smiertspionem was a Beria operation in Stalin's time. It was deactivated 20 years ago.
2 of our agents are dead.
My condolences. We had nothing to do with it.
Where's Koskov?
He disappeared 2 weeks ago. I was about to have him arrested.
Why?
For misusing state funds.
Involving Whitaker?
That is a security matter and cannot be discussed.
That was damn stupid! Get in the bathroom and lock the door. Stay where you are. Get down on your knees. Put your hands behind your back.
But for me, as an actress, I felt a bit shy of that scene.
Yeah.
And but I was very grateful. I mean, you were saying talk you through the scene. I don't think at the time I whereas now I would, I would look at the scene and almost mathematically and break it down, but into pieces. But back in those days, I didn't. So there wasn't that element of that from me, but there was from the mighty actors of John Rhys Davies and Timothy Dalton, of course, were, they had very much control of that particular scene. shall I tell you about how I got the role?
Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah.
So at the time I was with, oh God, I really wish in retrospect, you know how you look back on your life and you have regrets about certain things, and you really wish that you could have appreciated, you know, family members sometimes, or, oh God, I hear from people all the time, oh, I wish I'd really appreciated my mum more, you know, what she did, or I wish I'd appreciated my uncle, or I wish I'd appreciated, you know, my first boss, or whatever it is. And I wish I had appreciated all of the amazing opportunities that I had, but I was young and I didn't. So I just cruised along with it. And as you do, I guess, if you're a bit silly. So I was lucky enough to be with William Morris, who's the biggest agency in the world, and this is in London. And I had thought I found myself in London, and I didn't have an agent, and I thought, oh, I don't know what to do and who to go with. I was thinking about all the various levels of agencies, and I thought, if I go to the simplest agent, they might take me, but then maybe I won't be offered, you know, some really great roles. So maybe I should look for one that's working a little bit more in the industry. And let's say there's 10, you know, the hierarchy of acting agents. And I thought to myself, why don't I work, instead of from the bottom going up, why don't I work from the top down? It's a bit cheeky, but all they can do is say no. So I approached William Morris, being the top, the best, and I thought they'll say no for sure. And then I'll approach the one underneath them, they'll say no. And then I'll approach the one underneath them and they'll say no. And then I'll end up somewhere in the middle, which is fine by me. But when I approached William Morris, they said yes, based on Mad Max. And so when you're with a super agency like that, and it didn't occur to me how powerful William Morris was and how lucky I was to be there, because for me it was sort of easy, you know, I got in. But in retrospect, I wished I had thought about it a little bit more and, you know, appreciated it a little bit more, and didn't wander around the world, and stayed, you know, with William Morris in London. But I didn't. When you're with a big agency, the big agency gets the best parts, gets the best roles offered to them. The lesser agencies, it's just how it works. The lesser agencies don't get the big roles offered to them. And so if you're with a big agency, you are going to be offered, you know, ginormous roles, big and important roles. So my agent at the time, Maureen Chain, just such a lovely woman, said to me, there's a role in a Bond film coming up. Would you be interested? And I said, oh, yeah, for sure. No, definitely. Oh, yes, that would be fantastic. But I didn't ask her anything about it, really. It all just moved so quickly. And she said, okay, we're going to get you I can't remember, in those days it was faxed. There was no email. Nothing was emailed. I think I was either faxed a couple of scenes. I think that's how it worked at the time, or mailed a couple of scenes. And so I prepared them and turned up for the audition, and Debbie McWilliams was there. She's a really, really, really lovely, lovely lady. I think everyone says that, don't they?
Yeah,
She's really sweet. And Barbara Broccoli, you know, is amazing. I turn up, and this huge studio, absolutely massive, just with a little chair and a spotlight and the camera. And it was very odd, you know, looking around. I felt a little bit intimidated by the whole process. It wasn't like an audition, which usually you do in someone's office, you know, just with a camera on you. And it's very simple. But this was a, you know, big deal. So I did the audition, and I heard clomp, 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 coming from way in the distance, you know, over to me. And it was Barbara Broccoli. And she said to me, we really like you. We really like your look for the lead role. The lead role? Lead role? What? And she said, but unfortunately, you're so tall. And she's got to play, was it a cello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to play a cello, and you would make the cello look tiny. And I think you would also make Bond look small. You know, we need a someone who's more demure. And in those days, I was always told I would never be an actor because I was so tall. I wasn't fat or anything like that, but not that it would have mattered. Oh, mind you, in those days it did matter. These days it doesn't matter. But I was big, a big, tall warrior person. You know, I wasn't a little, and all actresses are tiny. They're all about, even not so much these days, but way back when, they're about 5 foot, 5'1". And I was 5'11". You know, and with a big frame to go with it, not a tiny little thing. So she said, your frame is too, she was very polite about it, too commanding, or too, you know, you're a big person, you're going to dwarf the cello. It's such a shame because we really like you, but we'd like to offer you a role in the film. What would you like to play? And I just thought, she's asking me what I would like to play. I said, a baddie. I would love to play a baddie. And of course I hadn't thought about this because I wasn't expecting the question. So, and I remember the lady that was crawling across rooftops in, she was a singer, a black lady.
Grace Jones.
Oh, Grace Jones.
Grace Jones. And my first thought was Grace Jones in a catsuit. So I said, I'd love to play a baddie in a catsuit crawling across a rooftop with a gun, with a machine gun. She went, really? And she's laughing. She said, well, I don't know if we can promise that, but we'll come up with something. You know, I was told I had the role, and I didn't know what it was. I was hoping to be in a black catsuit on a rooftop. So in the end, I wasn't. I was just, you know, an attractive lady, and I'm dotted throughout the film. Yeah. But if you don't know, you see me, but there's, you know, dotted here and there in a few places, and there's no dialogue. But I said to my agent, you know, I don't mind that there's no dialogue because I have done work prior to this, and people can see that I wasn't an extra or background artist, as they call them now, but in those days they were called extras. I'm not an extra. I have done a bit of acting, quite a bit of acting. I was really interested in playing this role because it's a Bond film, and you absolutely don't say no to playing a Bond girl. I mean, you would be insane to say no to being one of the most iconic films in the brands in the world, and still to this day, 30, whatever it is, 38 years later, still the most iconic brand that exists. No, nothing surpasses Bond. Nothing. And so being offered even a role that's non-speaking is just a feather in my cap, you know, to be a Bond girl. And I've had so many people over the years pull the, you know, the sexist thing. And it's such a shame these days. I'm so conflicted. I just don't know what to think anymore. Everything's so politically correct. You know, people often ask me, what do you think about the nudity? Were you taking advantage of? And it's awful that you had to portray a female who's subservient and half naked and you know, blah, 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 blah. And there's a movement of people who think Bond girls are disgusting and disgraceful and should be banned. And I don't know what to say to that because nobody's...
Objectifying.
Oh, yeah, objectifying. Thank you. And nobody's doing that on purpose. And there's no sinister action behind that in all of these films. And films all the way up to, I don't know when things changed with the political correctness, probably about 2000, year 2000, something like that. But up until then, you know, women were women and men were men, and women are pretty.
Yeah.
I'll be shot down for saying that, truly. I'll be hated for saying that.
You won't be shot down here for saying that.
No.
Not in front of you, but, you know, whoever listens to this will be very upset. you know, and I agree that, you know, I played a very masculine role in Road Warrior, and that's fine. But I was also very happy to play pretty women in other roles, and very you know, lucky to play that role in James Bond. But I'm just confused by the way people see Bond girls and how they disapprove of Bond girls these days, and how also the Bond girls have become less feminine. For me personally, it's a problem. I really want them to be feminine and beguiling, because that's a lovely thing about women. That's a quality that all women have that men don't have. You know, it's only a woman can have that particular kind of, you know, feminine magic, and it's taken away. And so a lot of women these days are very manly, which is fine as well. But it's just a shame, and you know, in a film that they're manly because someone has said it's inappropriate for them to be sensual and feminine, pretty and beguiling. Anyway, how do you feel about all of that?
Well, if you know, it's a very complicated issue, which I even, you know, doing this podcast, you've got to think carefully about how we discuss this issue, because it's always changing. And you know, you've got to kind of think about, before you open your mouth, what was the view, what is the view, what's going to be the view. I mean, thinking specifically about the scene that you're in, I honestly can't think of any objection, because I think it's a complete representation where Pushkin would have a lady like you, I believe, and Bond would use, in that situation, the distraction of you, and I don't think you appear weak. I don't think you appear like anything that would bring down women at all. I think it's, I honestly can't see any objections to the role of Rubavitch, and the way you, I mean, there'd be some, you know, some people, I don't know, like you are watching, you don't. There might be some people that criticize the fact that you don't step in, or, you know, I have no idea, but that's also not. That's, to me, that's not what would happen in that situation either. What you do is a really valuable part of the film, where you are observing, and though you mentioned before that you have fewer lines than John and Tim in that scene, your reactions, I think, are absolutely essential for two reasons, because they heighten the tension and make it more exciting, but also you in that scene, I think, represent the audience. Really, the whole audience, regardless of gender or anything like that. You are like the ordinary person caught in a situation between a hero and a meant to be villain. So I think there's far more to it than, you know, people trying to nitpick and find criticism. I think you represent a lot of amazing things in that scene.
Yeah, and I think,
yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and then that kind of carries on into the other scene that you're in a lot, you know, which is, again, no real dialogue, but a lot of acting from yourself. Yeah. And you again portray to the audience the belief that Pushkin is dead, and that's what's required. And I think, you know, in both those scenes, those key scenes that you're in, as Harry says, it's crucial that you know what you put across. And I do think, in terms of like the male gaze or whatever, in terms of, you know, that main scene, I don't think you're ever, I mean, you do see you know, like from behind, and there is, you know, slight bit of nudity and everything, but it's not like a long shot that pans up you or anything like that. And it's clear that you know, kind of your distress. It's not, yeah, it's just something. And then, you know, Bond doesn't, you know, I don't know,
he doesn't ogle
or anything like that. It's not like that at all. And so
no, I don't think
it's problematic.
Yeah, no, I don't think people referring to the scene in particular when they say, being a Bond girl is not appropriate. I think they're talking about generally. Generally, and look, as you say, it's a minefield to even go there, because all of us will get into serious trouble if we just put one word in the wrong place. But it's it's a tricky one.
The Living Daylights is a film with arguably one of the strongest female lead characters in, and if you particularly take into account she's not a spy, she's not in this world at all. We've actually spoken to Mariam about this, and she couldn't really understand how we were saying, no, you're amazing, your character, because she turns up as someone like yourself in this dangerous world of men, really, and then she's got to find her own way out and who to trust, and she ends up, of course, like riding a horse and going to battle and going on a plane and all this sort of stuff. So it's far from anti-feminist or anything like that from what we've seen through it. And I think that sometimes gets overshadowed, and people get a bit lazy and say those 80s Bond films or whatever, they were objectifying women, when if you actually watch them back, nothing of the sort, really. And you mentioned Grace Jones as well, another great character who has you could say has very masculine tendencies in some respects and extremely strong.
Yeah. I think people are just going too far these days with their objections. I really do. And I just wait until it blows over.
Yes.
Until they until they grow up and the next generation comes up and has a different attitude.
My slight issue with it is that if there was ever an argument that Bond girls were there just as somebody eye candy, that's the best way of putting it. I take issue because I think that role's just been reversed, because that's how Daniel Craig's been used throughout his films. So like
candy.
Yeah, so and there's and I've not got a problem with that at all. But there isn't the same criticism there. But in every film,
you know what? You've just said something really important that hadn't occurred to me. Men are now considered the eye candy rather than women. And so I hadn't thought about that. And all of the male actors have to have the perfect body. And they've got to be beautiful. They've got to have a full head of hair. They've got to have the six-pack and they've got to look great in a swimsuit.
It's just that the roles have been reversed. I think it's the same argument, but the other side of the coin, personally.
Yeah. It's been reversed, but it really has. You're right. You're absolutely dead right. Isn't that funny?
Maybe we need to carry on that conversation off camera.
You can hear loads of our other episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have interviews, special episodes, and reviews of all the Bond films. Simply search Really 007 Pod, and you should find loads of weird and wonderful content.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my honor to introduce the head of the Russian delegation, Comrade Leonid Pushkin.
Honored delegates, I bring you profound fraternal greetings from your comrades in Soviet Union.
I haven't done a convention, Comic-Con. Oh, in years and years and years, a really long time. And I agreed to do one in Farnborough this year in October. It's called FanX.
Okay.
And I don't know, when you first contacted me, they hadn't asked me, but they have since asked me. And I've said yes. And it's October the 5th and 6th.
Oh, brilliant. That's not long, is it, actually?
No, it's coming up. It's coming up really, really soon. Yeah. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be great. Interesting because of my situation. That
Yes.
I have the cancer, and the cancer metastasized is the term when it spreads, and as soon as it metastasizes, it becomes stage 4. This is the first time I've talked about the cancer at all. Nobody knows any of this. I've got a little blurb on IMDb. I thought I'd better, just say something so it's in my bio. And I just recently I had an Instagram page that it didn't even have my name on it, and it was just I used to collect just fantastic photographs that please my eye, not ones that I've taken, just photographs that I found. And I've just put them together, collated them, and they just make me happy to look at. And I had the idea, maybe I should say something there, but I'm not really the kind of person that would devote a whole Facebook page or a whole Instagram page or whatever is the latest, TikTok or something, to the illness and document every step of it, because it's just not me. So I kept it very private for years. But now that I'm going to be doing a convention, people will notice that I look different. I don't have my long hair. I'm older, I'm 72, so that's fine. There's nothing I can do about that. But I can't walk properly because the cancer, it's called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it's called CD5 positive, which means that it's a particularly aggressive kind of cancer. And I didn't know I had it. I had it for years, apparently. And non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is not a cancer that you can find in a blood test. I knew that I felt a bit odd, a few years before they found it. And there was some exploration in a hospital where they took me in and did loads of tests, to try and find out why I was feeling ill. And they couldn't find anything. So I thought, oh, okay, it's nothing. So a couple of years later, it showed up in my right leg bone, the tibia. And it's a huge long story, but it showed up there. And when they eventually did a biopsy and realized that it was cancer, it was almost too late. It's already stage 4 by then, and it had eaten straight through the tibia and ate through about a 4-inch. It looks like a shark has bitten my bone in half. But it's a miracle, really, because during chemotherapy, the bone was like this, the tibia. There was nothing in the middle. The cancer had eaten through in my right leg. And it grew it sent out little filaments, from the top to the bottom, and it joined. And now it's all higgledy-piggledy, but it's joined. And it's strong enough to walk on. So that's my right leg, but I can't feel it because of the chemotherapy that happens. It's a side effect. And I had a lot of treatment that didn't work over the last 2.5 years. And it ended up, the right leg has healed enough to stand on, but now it's in the left leg. And it's in the left leg, and the tibia bone, which is the main bone that holds you up, is fine. But the smaller bone, the fibula in the lower part of the leg, between the knee and the ankle, is shattered by the cancer. The cancer's eaten through it and broken it. So it's very difficult to walk. So in the past, for about a year, I was in a wheelchair. And now I fluctuate between a wheelchair and crutches. But I can't walk independently. I can't walk without crutches. So when I go to the convention, people will really know that I can't fudge it. They'll know something's wrong. So, in a way, that's why I wanted to I changed the Instagram page, just to mention it a little bit. But so I'm glad for this platform to be able to share with the fans who are going to see me in October. And you're going to see an older version of me. Well, that's to be expected. But you'll also see me struggling to walk. So bear with me is the answer. So I'll be on crutches or possibly even in a wheelchair, but it's still me.
Yeah.
And I still have my brain and my same personality. So that's a good thing.
This is sad as well. I'm a massive fan of Neighbours.
Are you?
Yeah. Honestly, I still watch it every day. It's really sad. I know. But unfortunately, I started watching it after you were in it, because you were in it quite early on, were you? With Shane Ramsey and Clive Gibbons, who's been back in it fairly recently. Clive, yeah, Dr. Clive.
Clive, can I have you here for a minute, please?
Yes?
What I wanted to say was, firstly, you should learn to mind your own damn business. And secondly, you're both fired.
I forgot about that. Yes, it was actually after Mad Max, I went straight into a series. Oh, God. It was a baptism of fire, because I'd only had, in Mad Max, only had a few lines of dialogue, and very few. And doing television commercials, I had only had a few lines of dialogue here and there, talking about a soap bar or something, whatever product I was advertising.
Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?
That's original.
Emerson High, 1975. You're in my class.
I was your teacher.
What's the secret of younger-looking skin? Oil of Ulan. It's so similar to the fluids in young skin that it actually reduces fine lines and wrinkles.
Miss Fitzhenry?
Bugsy Brown.
Oil of Ulan twice a day.
Wow.
The secret of younger-looking skin.
So I went straight into a series called Prisoner, Cell Block H.
Yeah. They had it on in the UK.
Wobbly sets.
Yeah.
And the sets were painted, and they were painted canvas. Oh, it's just a brilliant show. But all of the actors, all of the actresses, because it was all women, were all award-winning theatre actresses, and all trained. And I was the only one that wasn't. And of course, I came in as a model. They just saw me as a model, because that's what I had been, model, fashion model, before I did Mad Max. But Mad Max, they didn't really take very seriously. I mean, when I say they, some people who are very highly trained thespians who come from the theatre would look at something like Mad Max and see it as a bit of fairy floss, So me coming in, the reception was not favourable at all, and they gave me a very hard time. But as soon as they realised that, it only took about a week. As soon as they realised that I was there to work hard and to learn as much as I could, then they changed their attitude. And as I improved and improved and improved and improved, so that's where I learned the fundamentals of acting from all of those incredible women. And then after that, Prisoner Cell Block H, came Neighbours, which was very sort of happy, pretty,
yes.
Very different from the role that I played in Prisoner Cell Block H, and where all of the actors were very, very, very highly skilled theatrical actors. And in Neighbours they are as well, but there's a mixture in Neighbours, which is you have a mixture of actors who come from drama school and from theatre backgrounds, as well as people who have never acted before, and some who come from, like me, the world of other worlds and modelling. I was in there, I think it was about 6 months. I really loved it. It was such a great show. The only trouble at the time for me was that it shot in Melbourne, as it does. And I felt at the time, because I was just getting the momentum of Mad Max, which was it had just released worldwide. And so I wanted to try and, go overseas and see if I could get some other work from that. And I was contracted in Melbourne. Not that there's anything wrong with Melbourne, and there's nothing wrong with Neighbours, because even by then it was a huge institution, and everyone loved it, including me. but I really was conflicted because I wanted to be away, but at the same time, I was very happy with my role and the whole experience. That was good.
Been a breeding ground
So,
for loads of people, hasn't it? Neighbours. So many
yeah.
come from there and learnt the trade at the TV level, which is great. Yeah.
Yes, well, I learned a lot about TV through those productions, and then went on to those shows that you wouldn't have heard of, like Pacific Drive and Paradise Beach, and a film called Bullet Down Under, and there's a whole string of TV and small film roles that I did for quite some time after that. So I had a really nice career. I'm very satisfied with.
Home and Away, another institution.
Home and Away, yeah. I was only in that very briefly, just a couple of scenes, I think a couple of days, but still I got to be in it. I wasn't in, what was that other one? Is it Police Rescue or something?
I don't know, there was Shortland Street, but was that New Zealand? I can't remember.
What's the name?
Shortland Street.
Shortland Street, was that New Zealand? No,
it must be New Zealand. But I think there was a show called Police Rescue or something like that, where again it was only actors who came from theatrical backgrounds and came from university degrees. They didn't take anyone else. So it was always frustrating not to have an opportunity to be in that series. But eventually, after backwards and forwards, England, Australia, I discovered a perfect way to spend my life, which was summer in England and summer in Australia.
Oh, right.
So avoided winters for a long time. It wasn't every summer in Australia, but but every couple of summers in Australia and summers over here. It was really very nice. And eventually I wanted to, I always had an interest in anatomy and physiology. Even when I was really little, there were two things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to be, because my father was a cosmetic dentist, and he loved anatomy and physiology and science and technology, and I seemed to be the only one of the children who was also fascinated by it. So he spent a long time talking to me about it, and he would explain how the human body worked, and it was just absolutely brilliant. So I had a great love of anatomy and physiology, and also art. So I was quite conflicted between the two. But I thought that I would, pursue it. So at one stage, I think it was in 1990, remind me to tell you about Andreas Wiskonecki as well.
Oh, yes, yeah. We've met him as well, yeah.
I almost forgot to tell you. Right. But in 1990, I decided to give up acting, and I went to study naturopathy, which was naturopathy, homeopathy, and herbal medicine, but only lasted a year and came back because I was offered a film. But Andreas,
yeah.
So I met Andreas and his lovely girlfriend when I was doing Living Daylights, and everyone on Living Daylights was just lovely. I mean, nobody was a prima donna. Nobody. I mean, you must have heard that from everybody. John Glenn is the loveliest director I've ever worked with in the whole of my entire life.
Oh.
He is honestly just, and I've bumped into him several times over the years. He's always the same. He's just so unaffected by the business.
Yeah.
Unaffected in a bad way, even in a good way. I mean, he's just him. He doesn't change. He's one of the nicest people I think I've ever met. And so is Barbara Broccoli, unchanged from as far as I'm concerned, and Debbie McMillan's McWilliams, and Debbie even when she went to visit Australia, she even made a point of coming to visit me, and have a cup of tea and a bit of a chin wag, and just the greatest people. It's just working on a Bond film is more than just taking on a role. But John Glenn was just the loveliest man, and Andreas also amazing, and so he and his, it's just one of those things. He and his girlfriend and I became really good mates. And a couple of years later, when William Morris sent me over to the William Morris America to try, well, not to try, they had worked with me in London, William Morris, and then they thought it was time for me to go to America to try the big guns. So I went over there, and I had nowhere to live. Andreas was over there also trying his way, and he put me up and fed me, and I slept on his couch.
Yeah. Wow.
And at the time, it was really challenging because I was dating a world famous rock star, Michael Hutchence from In Excess.
Yeah.
So I was dating him and having this, this amazing introduction to William Morris America at the same time. And my agent in America said, you can't have a boyfriend. You can't, it's distracting for you. You keep leaving and going to see him. And I said, why can't I have a boyfriend and a career? You can't. You have to concentrate on your career only. And I found that very challenging. And in the end, it split us apart, the agency and myself, because I kept on going away. And the agent was not happy and he kept on saying, it was him actually, the agent, who said to me, you're not appreciating the opportunities that you have. It's not everyone who's sent to William Morris America, to have their career furthered. And all you seem to want to do is to just hang around with your rock star boyfriend. But I was auditioning as well at the time, and taking it very seriously. But I was very conflicted, and I wish in a way I had taken it more seriously. But Andreas and his girlfriend were really incredible and so supportive, and stayed friends of mine for a really long time. And it's only really in the last 10 years that I lost touch. What's he doing? Do you know?
Yeah, we have chatted to him. Is he in Berlin? I think
he's living in Berlin, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's mainly
children, is he?
Yeah, I think he's retired from acting, but I think he still does a lot of meditation, doesn't he? And
yeah,
lots of meditation.
Yeah.
Bless.
Oh yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear that, because he's such a beautiful person.
He was very nice.
He is on Instagram. If you
yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I should look him up.
Yeah, you messaged him on there. I'm sure he'd reply. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He would for sure. How old would he be now? He'd be in his 60s, no? Late 60s?
I assume so.
Mid-60s.
Was he? What was he like? Mid-20s? Was he on Living Daylights? I'm guessing. I don't know.
I don't know. I can't remember. Something like that. We have to look at IMDb. How it is.
Will you be reunited with some cast members at this event in October? Do you know who you might be meeting up with?
No, because it's not a Bond convention. It's a general sci-fi and TV and film celebrity convention. So it's a sort of usual. It's run by Jamie Milne, who runs Wales Comic Con.
Right.
So Wales Comic Con they always have a variety of actors, and it's not necessarily anyone from any genre or any field, like not just sci-fi, but it does tend to be sci-fi. Lots of Doctor Who and lots of English actors from various shows, and a few American actors. Can't think of who's going exactly off the top of my head.
I'm going back to when you mentioned that event. So apologies if I'm organising this question badly in my head, because
No,
you mentioned that you wanted to make it clear to fans about your appearance and your mobility and things like that. And firstly, I've just got to say, you look absolutely wonderful, Virginia.
Yeah,
you look incredible.
you really do.
You look beautiful.
We haven't seen you walk, but thank you.
No, and and just hearing you speak about all that was really inspiring and really amazing. And if you don't mind me just asking, how your situation with the cancer, when you look, has it sort of altered your perspective on your career? I know earlier you mentioned you didn't appreciate things as much as you wish you had, but I suppose that's the same for all of us.
Yeah.
But when you look at your career and your life to be in 2 major cinematic franchises, I mean, that is extraordinary and really, really impressive.
Like Farscape as well.
Yeah.
And Farscape. Yeah, I was just going to mention Farscape, which was
so
mammoth.
how's it like affected your perspective, and when you revisit and when you watch James Bond or you hear about James Bond, has things altered?
It's a very good question. The answer would be really different if I was still acting. But I retired a very, very long time ago. I retired after Farscape because I wasn't feeling well, and I think it was then that I got cancer. I'm sure, because my cancer is cancer of the lymphatic system. And when I was doing Farscape, my lymphatic system shut down because of the makeup. I was wearing a plastic makeup. The company doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if there were toxins in what they were doing, but it's called Pax, the makeup, and it's liquid. Basically, it's liquid latex, and so when they put it on you, it's liquid plastic, so it doesn't allow your skin to breathe at all. A little bit like the Goldfinger young lady, in that she was wearing the gold paint, and it didn't allow her skin to breathe. Same with me, but I didn't have it all over my entire body. I only wore it where you could see. I wasn't naked. I was wearing clothes. The character was wearing clothes most of the time. But I didn't sweat when the makeup came off. And it was discovered by one of the doctors and a trainer, a gym trainer, that my lymphatic system was shutting down. And I think that was the beginning of it. But yes, interesting question, because I was very, very tired after and sick after Farscape. So that was it. I went over to America after that, hoping to, when I recovered a little bit, hoping to further my career, because I felt that in Farscape I really learned how to act properly, because she was a very complex character, and I worked very, very hard. And I was older, I was more mature and more focused, so I was able to better concentrate, and also given the opportunity to play a really complex character. I hadn't been given that opportunity before, to play a schizophrenic, not really schizophrenic, but a character who had several sides to her, because she was an alien, so she could be anything. So it was a wonderful opportunity to play this really complex character, and I felt that I was able to really improve as an actor, and I wanted to go to America to try again, having been there, many years before. And when I got over to America, I hadn't aged at all. I think I was 49, and I hadn't aged. I was very much like my father. My father passed away in 2009, but he was a very youthful guy, and I take after him in my mind and my energy and the way I look. It's very much after Dad. I'm a twin of my father. And so it wasn't as though at 49 I was a decrepit old, aging old glamour puss. I wasn't. I hadn't aged at all. But they said to me, you can't come into Hollywood at 49. You can come in at 29 just, but you can't come in at 49 and expect to start. What are we going to do with you? You don't look 49. We can't put you up for roles as a 30-year-old because you're 49. We can't put you up for roles of a 49-year-old because you don't look like a 49-year-old, and it would be ridiculous. because you look much too young. So it was a really awkward time. So I tried a few agencies, and they all said the same thing. It was so sad, because in that time you couldn't be an attractive woman who was older. Now you can.
Yeah.
There's no problem with it now. I mean, this was 25 years ago. No problem at all with it now. You can be attractive and be aging around the edges, and be young, be youthful looking for your age. I mean, anything goes these days. But back then it was very, very difficult. If I had looked like the lady in the sweet shop, no problem. I could have gone straight into acting. Or if I looked like I could have been a policewoman or something like that. But I could never play a policewoman because I looked too glamorous, with the cheekbones and so forth. Back then. So I gave up. So I gave up in 2000. The last acting job I had, I think, was 2003, 2004. So it's 20 years ago now. So your question is really interesting, but and it would be a different answer, I think, if I was still acting. But cancer changes everything. It changes your whole perspective on life. Everything, because every moment you're fighting for your life. It's a very aggressive, nasty predator, is cancer, and especially when it's, in my case, when it's stage 4, and I just keep going on and on and on and on and on. I'm winning, it's spreading. It keeps spreading. It's spread now up my body and to my, my knees, my hip, my abdomen, my lower back, my chest. It's all over the place. But I'm on a new treatment now, which I sort of just going, digressing ever so slightly from your question. It's very exciting technology. If you like tech and you like science, oh boy, have I got something to share with you. It's called, it's immunotherapy. And this new drug that they have me on is based on the technology that they used, or the science that they used for the COVID vaccination. So they're using antibodies. So chemotherapy is very, very aggressive. It doesn't work on me. My cancer laughs at chemotherapy. It eats it. It seems to enjoy it. I don't know. It doesn't work. So I had chemotherapy, a stem cell transplant, and radiotherapy, and nothing worked really, because the cancer just didn't care. But this new treatment is it's based on altering antibodies, and just like the new technology with COVID. Since COVID, obviously, all of the scientists all over the world had to share their findings. When they were discovering what they could do with these antibodies, every country in the world shared. It's kind of a shame in a way that there was COVID, because otherwise this amazing invention could have been just belonging to Oxford University in England, and they would have had the awards, gazillions of awards for inventing this. But that doesn't matter. They saved the world. They shared their knowledge, and each country individually has run with this technology and come up with lots and lots of different uses for it, and different diseases that they're working on. It's pretty amazing. It started a whole new wave, and medicine is moving in, or especially cancer. Medicine is moving in a whole new direction now. We're moving very quickly away from chemotherapy, which compared to what I'm on now is almost barbaric. It's primitive, because chemotherapy kills everything. Not only kills the cancer, well, hopefully kills the cancer, but it also kills a lot of you. And it's, it's debatable as to whether someone dies from the chemotherapy side effects or whether they die from, from the cancer. But anyway, last year, my hematologist consultant said America was working on a brand new technology, a brand new antibody for my particular type of cancer. So it was approved. The good news, huge long story shorter, it was finally approved in January, I think, this year. And it was, they did the trials and tests, and it was rolled out in January. And I'm one of the first people to be on it. So it's called Glofitamab. And it's I don't know if you're into all of this, but I am. I just love it. It's a bispecific monoclonal antibody. So bispecific, it means that they've been able to attach two arms, like a Y, two arms to an antibody. So they've taken an antibody and they've attached two arms. One of the little arms, this is revolutionary. One of the little arms attaches itself to a B cell, B cancer cell. One of the little arms attaches itself to a white blood cell, T cell. And so they're captured. The cancer cell, this is very rude.
Oh, yeah.
The cancer, isn't it? You know, yeah. Yeah.
So the cancer cell and the white blood cell, T cell, are captured on this little antennae, and the white blood cell can kill the cancer. So usually they had come up with, after the COVID technology, they had come up with a monoclonal antibody. And so, which is the Glofitamab monoclonal antibody. Anyway, so it had just one arm, and they've been using this technology for quite some time, a couple of years. And the one arm, immunology, attaches itself to the cancer, but then the white blood cells have got to find it. They've got to travel around the body to locate this antibody that's attached to the cancer. Whereas this technology now attaches the killer, the good defense killer cell and the cancer cell all in one, and it just zaps it. So the great news is that it's working. And it's killing the cancer really very quickly. But with my cancer, of course, we don't know until I'm bang smack in the middle of it now. And I just had my 4th cycle. So I'm about to have my 5th soon. A cycle is a period of 3 weeks in between treatments. They call it a cycle. And so there's 12 cycles in all, which will take me up to January. So after January, we just have to wait and see, because my cancer usually hides, it hibernates, it kills, the medications kill some of it, most of it, and then it comes back, but really aggressively. So what happens is for the time that you know you have cancer, you've got a choice of either giving into it or fighting it, or, I mean, everyone's different, aren't they? Every single individual is different. They have different circumstances. I'm by myself, so I'm sort of forced to crack on and get on with it and move, be logical about it. I've got a logical brain like my dad, so I like to keep informed. What is it? What's the treatment? How long is it going to take? What do I have to do? How will it work? I need to know all of the odds and so forth. So have a logical approach to it. And you have to remove emotion from it as much as you can. Because I was always, how have I changed? I was always a very, emotional person, sensitive. And kind of person who just, was stimulated by an idea, led by ideas, led by emotions, led by feelings. But with this cancer, all of that goes out the window, because you can't give into the feeling of it. Because if you do, when I say the feeling of it, how can I explain this? It's a really interesting question, honestly, that you've asked me, and quite a complex one. That's my kitty cat. It changes everything, because you see life differently. Life becomes finite. It's no longer, one day I'm going to die. It's here he is. Hello.
Hello.
Say hello. No, it's not interested. So yeah, it's different people have different ways of coping with it. Some people can only cope if they share every single second on Facebook. And, you know, here's me going to the hospital, here's me in the hospital, here's me, you know, going through everything single stage. And they are lapping up the waves of support from strangers. And so I always thought that was kind of odd, because these strangers don't know you, and they're saying, we love you, and you're wonderful and you're strong. Well, you know, are you? So that's one way that people can cope with it. And then another way is to, you know, surround yourself with family and friends, and I think you can cope with it that way. But my way, I just prefer to be by myself and just sort of get on with it. But it really dramatically changes everything, because life as we know it, you don't think about death. None of us do. Every now and again you think, oh, I don't really want to get old, and or, you know, what career am I going to change careers before I get too old, or where would I love to retire? You know, when you start to get a little bit older, where would I like to retire to? And you're thinking about life always. You don't think about, you don't think about the end. But when you have cancer, it's such an aggressive disease that you could go, especially if you're stage 4, you know, you can go pretty much any time. So I've been given 6 months to live several times, you know, and I'm still here. So after the stem cell transplant, they said it'll probably be about 5 years, and it wasn't, you know, before it comes back, and it was months. It was just a matter of months. So you go into absolute, I don't know about anyone else, but I went into absolute practical mode, and which is probably boring for anyone listening to this, but just in a nutshell, you have to make your plans, you know. So I encourage everyone to have a will. I had one even before I had cancer, you know, just because it's a sensible thing to do, to have a will. Otherwise, if you go unexpectedly, have an accident or something like that, you're, you know, thrown into chaos. What happens to all your direct deposits and all your payments and your mortgage and God knows what? So I went through all the practical things and made sure I had executors, and made sure I made lists of who gets what, and, you know, when I go. And I live in a rental property, so I made sure I had lists of what belongs here and what doesn't, you know, practical things like that. So you start to the end. It's really weird. I don't know if really elderly people have the same feeling when they know, you know, that they are, you know, the end is nigh. I should imagine that they would be so elderly that they don't have that same thought process. But when you still have your brain, your mind, and your energy, and you're faced with something like this, you have basically two choices. Either you can be practical about it, or you can just give up and panic. But giving up and panicking is not going to help you in any way. It's going to do the opposite. It's going to be incredibly detrimental to you. You can't suddenly, you know, someone said, oh, do you have a bucket list? And, you know, you're going to go around and do everything you ever wanted to do, you know, ride on a motorbike in a bikini, you know, whatever it might be. And no, you don't, because you're in a fight. You're in a fight for your life, and every minute is a struggle. When I'm sitting down here now, I feel completely normal, and I feel happy, and you know, reasonably well. But as soon as I move is when I, you know, so any movement whatsoever reminds me that I have cancer, because it's very difficult to move. What an interesting question. You know, how I wish we could ask everyone who has cancer that same question. How is it changing your life? It does. It changes. Even when we all know people who've had it and who are in remission, and actors and non-actors and family members who've suffered from cancer and beat it, but always in the back of their minds, they're waiting for it to come back. They may not admit it, but they know that, you know, one day it's probably going to come back. So you are forever changed once it's touched you. And the scary thing is that it affects 1 in 2 people.
Yeah.
So if I've got it, who's going to get it in this room?
Yeah.
You know, in our chat room. You know, it's pretty scary stuff. And honestly, I just urge you, truly, all of you, to just check if something feels a bit weird, if you feel a bit odd and there's no explanation for it, just keep on asking your doctor to test you, and just keep on and on and on and on, because cancer loves to hide and loves to show itself as something else. It's a very clever predator. So, but thank you for asking, because I don't mind talking about it at all, really.
It's great
because
for
I'm
us
very...
to hear it.
It's really great for us to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I don't mind. I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that, but I just find it is interesting, and it's awful, but it's life. And
I mean, we love James Bond. Don't get me wrong, James Bond's one of our best things, but this is more important, you know. And I just want to say that your positivity and your outlook on life in whole is an inspiration.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
You use the same word, yeah. Inspirational.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks. I think that's the only way to be. If you get something as horrible as cancer, you have to be practical about it. You just have to be, and you've got to keep your energy up and fight as best you can. There's not much you can do except just keep your energy up and just be sort of in denial of it, you know, because the second you give in, it's just going to, you know, grab you. So, but as far as what it does, actually, Harry, one of the things it does do, which is really profound, and I'd love to speak to other people who are my age. Truly, I really would love to find out whether they start to look backwards and start regretting and having, I suppose they do. I suppose everyone does, don't they? Even you guys, when you're young, you would be thinking, oh, I wish I'd taken that job that I was offered when I was 21. Why didn't I take it? Or why did I let that girl go? You know, things like that. But we all have regrets, I'm sure, where we wish we'd done things differently. And
I mean, you
guess
mentioned a bucket list before, but I mean, if we were all to have a bucket list, the things you've ticked off in your life and your accomplishments that we'll never, things, you know, we dream of and we'll never get to, you've, you know, really achieved some absolutely incredible things.
But it was an accidental bucket list. You know, I just, honestly, I was so lucky and so privileged, but I didn't realize I was. I had no idea how privileged I was. No, absolutely no idea. I was like this dodgem car, you know, like a car in a dodgem car lot, just kind of bouncing into whatever was offered to me. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. And without realizing how special all of these things were. So, yeah, it's an accidental bucket list. So, I've pretty much done little bits of almost everything I wanted to. And now the most wonderful thing is just enjoying. I know it sounds kind of kooky and silly, but you end up just really loving nature and really enjoying it, and peace, you know, and the beauty of it. And I think a lot of people say that because suddenly things that are not real are not as important, you know. Anyway, I could talk about that for hours and hours and hours, but basically I've loved my career and I've had so much fun, and it's been really educational, and I've worked with incredible people and had such an extraordinary career, I think. You know, I wasn't one of those people that was cutthroat. You know, I didn't. There are some people, I've even met them, who will do anything for the next big role, but really anything. And really, they'll network with people that they hate, and they'll scheme and connive and try and position themselves. And when they get that big job, you know, they'll do anything to hang on to it and get the next one and the next one and the next one. And they're driven. And a lot of people who aren't that conniving are also incredibly driven to be at the top. And once they're at the top, they'll scratch your eyes out if you dare to come near them and try and topple them. You know, and I didn't ever have that. And I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah.
Because if you get to the top and you are expected to stay there no matter what horrible pressure. You know, at least I dabbled with, you know, being towards the top and doing, I didn't really even see it that way. You know, I just enjoyed what I was doing. So I'm glad I didn't ever have the pressure of the world on my shoulders, like, you know, Timothy and all those other people who had huge, massive roles. So I've been quite satisfied. Look, I need to know, the brothers.
Yes.
Who's your dad's favorite Bond?
Oh, do you think he'd say Sean?
I think he'd probably say Sean Connery. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's who, because he's late 70s now, so he saw like Goldfinger, and didn't he, at the cinema? I think was that the first one, maybe From Russia with Love. So he saw the very first James Bond. So I think if that's what you're brought up with, that's who you picture, isn't it, in your mind? As well.
Yeah, I always had that philosophy too, that, you know, in your era, it's the James Bond of your era. But when you're a bit older, you have, like you said, you have the luxury. He's seen Goldfinger. He's seen them all.
Yeah, seen them all. Yeah.
Every single, but then he's been there. He's been there and lived through pretty much every single James Bond. And who's his favorite? It's still Sean Connery. It's amazing.
I think you'd probably say that. I mean, the first time I ever went to the cinema, I was taken with the fourth brother, the older brother, was The Living Daylights when I was 4 or 5. So I can really? Just about remember it, but that we had that on video though, and that was on regular rotation.
Oh yeah,
it
was.
That's the one that you just said, the magic thing. James Bond. Bond is the only film franchise that you never get tired of. You can watch any film from any era, going way back to the first one to the last one, never get tired, and watch each one several times over, and you will never, ever get sick of any of them. And there's no other franchise in the world that can boast.
Nailed that.
Yeah.
Spot on.
We're here. Yeah. You've given us such an amazing insight into your, not only your career, but your personal life at the moment, which is really inspirational, like I say. And we'll obviously keep in touch, and hopefully some of us will be able to get to Farnborough. We can tell our fans that that's going to happen, because what a great opportunity.
I want to come and say hello.
That'll be fantastic. I mean, there's loads of things we haven't gone into. I mean, Farscape we haven't talked about. Nicholas, I mean, I'm one of the best directors ever you've worked with. There's Oliver Reed. There's loads of things, and I think.
Oh God, with Castaway.
No, hold it. Listen here, girl up. Let me send a chopper in the next 2 weeks. Janice, don't. But I just flip. That's not the point. This is mine. I'm going to do it.
Do you want to take a picture of what it's really going to be like on a desert island?
Gerald, stop it.
Take a joke, old girl. Take a joke.
Actually, I could do with a colour shop like that. Hold it. Hey, Lucy. Real desert island dress. You know what I mean?
Look, we'll take those. I've got 50 boxes of Polaroid film.
Oh, I can get off on Polaroids too, dear. Guys, Donnie! Get the martinis ready, darling. Woo! Saved it last. I can write my book now. 2 hours on a desert island. Come on, no more turning the undies. Come on!
Bloody noise.
Here I come!
Nicholas Roeg.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Roeg is one of the best directors ever.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, you can never understand a word he said. Seriously. So we ended up on Castaway, not the Tom Hanks Castaway, but the other, the Nicholas Roeg Castaway.
Yeah.
We ended up everyone just ad-libbing. There were scripts.
Oh, it might be,
yeah, we all ad-libbed because we couldn't understand a word he was saying. And he honestly, He's a great character. Just wonderful guy, amazing character. But he had has a way of speaking like a politician. Okay, and you go yeah, okay, and you just do what you like, and he seemed to like it. Yeah, we did. He's very, very difficult to understand. He has a particular kind of accent. It's a very rude thing to say, isn't it?
No.
Oh, no.
But that was maybe just from my perspective. And I can understand most people, except a really, really, really strong Glaswegian accent. is challenging.
Ferguson.
Ralph Ferguson. Yeah. Amongst others. Yeah, it's I love the Scottish accent. I really do.
Oh, it's lovely.
I absolutely love it. Gerard Butler's type of Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads of things we haven't talked about. Well, you'll have to have me back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I've really loved it, and
we talked about everything else except 007, really, but we did.
No. Yeah,
that's what we end up doing.
We've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Gone dark as well.
Gone dark. Yeah, I know. I'm going to listen. Lots of love.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me as a guest. And I'll speak to you, I hope.
Yes, of course.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Oh, no. I'm sorry to put you through that, my dear. Oh, it's the first time I've ever been grateful that James Bond is a good shot.